we took like a film critic class. This is really funny. It was 8 a.m. in the morning. And on Wednesdays, it's like, oh, cool. So like an 18-year-old's going to wake up at 8 a.m. and watch Heat.
Of course.
Which is funny because that's the movie I fell asleep in. I fell asleep watching Heat because it's 8 a.m. and I was up till 2:30 playing World of Warcraft and ignoring my homework. And the teacher, because I fell asleep so frequently in the class, even though I loved the movies, I really, really liked them. And she comes up to me and she goes, "You have no respect for cinema. You have no respect."
Ouch.
And I was like, "I'm just tired. I really love this class."
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the About Story podcast. My name is Nathan Johnson, and I'm here with one of my very good friends, Davy McCall, writer-director extraordinaire.
Thank you.
Yes, he is a fantastic guy. I've actually had the chance to work with him in the past. We've worked on a lot of projects together. Yes. And I think it's been really great because we've learned a lot from each other, and we've kind of collaborated, and we've kind of grown up together, which has been really awesome.
Totally.
So thanks for coming, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I actually can date our relationship. It's almost exactly 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Like, we started working together on stuff probably right around this time 10 years ago.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that a trip? So, I'm doing this, evaluation of the last 10 years this last year, going okay, what went right, what went wrong? So I feel pretty ready to talk about these things.
Awesome.
Yeah, a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's kind of start at the beginning. Okay. So maybe talk a little bit about kind of what got you interested in storytelling or filmmaking. I know that you've been in that field for a while,
yes.
But what kind of got you in there?
Well, great question. A lot of things. It's a long story, so you can cut me off whenever it starts to get boring. I'm not sure how much time we have.
We have all day.
Okay, great. No, so basically, I've always loved movies my whole life. Always. There's just, ever since I was a kid, there's literally footage of me as a 3-year-old trying to conduct the home video at the lake. I was trying to make some movie, and it was clear that I was just entirely stuck in my head and I had no clue what was going on. But in my head I was directing a movie, and I kept telling them to put the camera different places, no clue what any of that meant. And I could basically only get one word out, one phrase out to indicate that I was directing. I kept saying, "Action over here."
Very specific.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, "Action over here." I was like, no, action over there. No, action over here. And it was just I was a child. And so it's funny, I always thought that I wanted to be, or I've always loved movies, and I never really entertained the idea that I was going to be a director, at least so I thought, until I was studying psychology at Chico State. I just remembered this story just now. I left it out of my other thing. That's ridiculous. My other speech that I gave the other day. But I was studying psychology, and I realized, I was in college for the first time. I just left home, and it was kind of a lonely moment. I didn't fit in at college. I loved my classes, and amazingly enough, it was also where I studied the Palestinian-Israeli conflict for the first time. That's where the movie we worked on that you produced came from. And I realized while I was studying psychology, I'm not learning how to help anybody. I'm not learning how to connect. And that was the only reason I got into psychology, was I was like, I really want to mean something. I want to help people with their struggles. Yeah, make a difference in some way. And I thought, I liked listening to people. I liked talking to people. And but I feel like all I was doing was learning how to judge people, which was really frustrating. It was like, oh, here's how you can, analyze someone's personality. And usually that just came down to their parents gave them problems, and if they have problems, it's because of their parents or because of something traumatic that happened to them, and you could kind of see it on a spectrum that way. And I was like, oh, cool. So I just found myself judging everyone instead of loving anybody, which is funny because I was an atheist at the time. And that shouldn't have mattered to me. I suppose in that lens, well, that's not necessarily a nice thing to say, but I was weirdly preoccupied with being able to love on people and help people with their lives. And around that time, The Last Airbender came out.
Okay, so we're talking about the movie?
The movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So the show
we got
came,
a different.
the show came to an end,
Right.
and the show was like my favorite thing that ever came out. I was just obsessed with it.
Right.
And I was so sad that it was over. And then I started finding this news that M. Night Shyamalan was making a movie, and I was like, oh my gosh. And my first instinct, instantaneously, was, he needs my help. which is like, okay, so I've never really made anything besides Spanish videos in high school, which were just for the assignment. Like, that was literally almost my only film experience. And I thought to myself, wow, there's this guy who's made some of like the best movies the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, and he's paid millions of dollars, and I literally think he needs my help to make a movie. Like, that's what I actually think, is that I know what would make this good. And I was like, wow, if I really feel that way, I should go put my money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
And so I drop out of college. I go home. I get 2 jobs. I work as an ice cream scooper and as a lavender product curator creator.
Wait, how did your parents feel about you dropping out of school?
We didn't have any money, so that was fine. My mom worked in real estate, and that was the result. And it was during the housing market crash, so things weren't good, and so we didn't have anything. So it was actually really great for me to come home, as a matter of fact. So that worked out. But I worked to make enough money to buy a camera. I got a T2i, which I still use today.
Nice. It's a good camera.
Yeah, it is.
I think that was one of my first cameras too.
Oh, it was everybody's at the time.
T2i.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I got that. I got a computer. I got Final Cut, and I bought it all, and I just made my first movie. And then I made my second movie. And then I was like, wow, I'm getting the hang of this. This is really great. And it was probably, if I'm being honest, it was one of the most alive times I've ever been. And it's funny because I started making movies because I was so heartbroken from a breakup that like sitting by myself was too painful. That's how stupid my breakup was at the time. But like, my emotional turmoil was so real. I had to stop. I had to stop sitting around. I had to do something because there was just so much
like energy. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I made my first movie, which is about this guy obsessed with his ex-girlfriend. And that felt really good. And it was so funny. In fact, my first review was from my parents. And they took me to the side. And looking back, I liked the movie, but they did not like it. They basically said, this movie's horrible. And anybody who sees this is going to think you're awful and like... and like, you shouldn't share this with anybody and whatnot, but it wound up getting me into Biola University.
Yeah.
So I missed all the deadlines for all the major schools except for Chapman and Biola University. And I wind up applying to, and so I don't get into Chapman, and I go to Biola. And here's what's really interesting, though. I find out from my mom, right when I'm about to go to Biola University and become pursue filmmaking for real at a university, right?
Right.
She goes, I found something. She brings up my second grade autobiography, and you have a lot to talk about in second grade autobiography.
Of course.
Really, it's just like the things you were obsessed with, and so I talk a lot about Pokemon in my autobiography because that's what's important. I also talk about the fact that it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And this is crazy, but my second-year-old self said, I want to be a filmmaker when I grow up. I want to be a film director. And I was like,
wow.
I forgot about that for 12 years. I completely forgot about it. But apparently, it was innate. Yeah. And that's what reminded me about that, 3-year-old Davy going, action over here and stuff like that. So apparently it's been completely infused in me since the beginning. I just forgot about it.
Yeah.
But funny thing about psychology is my dad and I didn't have I wasn't really close with him personally. I mean, he's a great dad and he was great, but we didn't I didn't see our relationship as great as a kid. But here's what's interesting. There was one thing we always connected on, which was going to the movie theater. Right? And that I found that kind of fascinating. Like, I look back on it and studying myself, a little bit Freudian and a little bit, just psychoanalyzing. It's like, wow, so my whole life becomes the one thing my dad and I always connected with. So it's like, as much as I want to say that stuff's annoying and you can't find a way to understand or help people, it's like, that's not exactly true. It helped me understand myself even in a big way.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's how I got started. It was this emotional turmoil led to action.
That's excellent. Yeah. I think it's interesting too, because it's almost like there's certain things I think that we're kind of born to do. Like we have this innate calling or this destiny, however you want to describe it. But like, I feel like we're called to certain things, and like people who are called to be storytellers and filmmakers, it's just like in your blood, in your DNA.
That's how it feels.
Yeah.
And it's also funny you mentioned that. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that statement. in high school, I was really shy. I didn't do well in high school. Shy is a weird word for me, isn't it? But I was very shy in high school.
You were shy? Really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't shy at my church where I grew up, but that was like half, maybe 60-70% of my life was church, and then the other part that I just hated was high school. But it was just so interesting because I pretty much would trust everything the teachers would talk about. But the second my English teachers would start talking about movies, I would get really loud and really vocal, and I would just completely disagree with like everything. It's so funny. M. Night Shyamalan, actually, he has such a through line in my life. I need to meet him and tell him about it.
Yeah.
I need to make a good movie first, a really good one. But it was funny. Like I had this one teacher named Miss Pasquini. She hated me because I just didn't buy what she was selling. And it's funny. She was really helpful in my writing, actually. 'Cause she was instrumental.
How so?
She taught me how to write better. If I'm being honest, it's like don't repeat these words. Like that's one example. But she was really hard on me. And but the funny thing is she would talk about meaning in film. And this is where I felt like, it's funny, I just woke up. Like I got really loud in class. And she was talking about Unbreakable, and she goes like, yellow means this, green means this. She was like, green means uncertainty, yellow means courage, red means evil, and blah blah blah. And I was like, who told you that? I was like, what do you mean? Like, you know this? You're speaking so confidently about this. It's like, did M. Night Shyamalan tell you? Is this in the behind the scenes? And she goes like, no, you can just tell because that's what an artist can do. Is they can convey meaning super clear. I was like, can you explain where the yellow means this exactly? Because it's just like, I don't agree. I think they're interesting colors, and he chose them for some reason, but I don't think you're necessarily right. And unless you can confirm it, you're just like wasting our time. And she didn't like that, obviously, but I just really I just held my ground. And it was just interesting. I've always been weirdly confident about my opinions creatively with movies and whatnot. And then I also found in high school with my we took like a film critic class. This is really funny. It was 8 a.m. in the morning. And on Wednesdays, it's like, oh, cool. So like an 18-year-old's going to wake up at 8 a.m. and watch Heat.
Of course.
Which is funny because that's the movie I fell asleep in. I fell asleep watching Heat because it's 8 a.m. and I was up till 2:30 playing World of Warcraft and ignoring my homework. And the teacher, because I fell asleep so frequently in the class, even though I loved the movies, I really, really liked them. And she comes up to me and she goes, "You have no respect for cinema. You have no respect."
Ouch.
And I was like, I'm just tired. I really love this class, which I thought was really funny. But when I did my film analysis, it was funny because everybody would choose The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. They'd choose The Godfather. They'd choose these and they'd show a 3-minute clip and then they'd talk about all the meaning behind it. And I chose Disney's Tarzan.
That's pretty gutsy.
Yeah, no,
that's pretty gutsy.
I'm sitting on I don't give a rip apparently about what people think about me, but I had the most advanced description of the meaning behind everything because I realized everybody's just making stuff up and going and so I was like, okay, we'll play the making up stuff game. And I went on the Tarzan thing, and it was really interesting. This was one of the first times where my mother was like, "Wow, you've really got something here," because I gave my presentation to her, and it was 20 minutes over, and it was only for a 3-minute thing because there was so much going on, and you can't really deny some of these things. And I was like, I actually don't think I'm wrong about a lot of these things, and I'm not saying it like it's gospel. I'm saying it I'm pretty sure this is an idea that they were going for here.
Right.
For example, the sun and the moon transform into the eyes of the leopard. Right, there's a crossfade, and I was like, well, that it's a powerful foreboding thing. It's he kills them during the day and he kills them during the night. He's death, right? And I was it's meaning here, and I was like, well, there's a good chance that they actually meant something like that. I don't know for sure, but my mom told me, she goes, you might want to consider being a filmmaker, and I was like, no, absolutely not. That's ridiculous.
And now look where you are now.
I know, isn't that crazy? Wow. Yeah, the plot thickens. Anyway, sorry, I keep
awesome.
Going back to how I got started again.
No, that's good. That's good. So I think kind of seeing the since we're talking about symbolism, I think some of those things that you find in storytelling is really interesting because I think that's what makes a story lasting and relatable, cross-culturally and across time. Because when we see this symbolism and we see what is it saying about the human condition? What is it saying about people? What is it saying about love? what are your thoughts about that? Like,
Oh, symbolism?
yeah.
Well, I want to understand a little bit more of what you mean. So you're saying symbolism matters? I mean, I completely agree. Is that what you?
Yeah, just kind of like what. Maybe let's put it this way, like for your stories, like when you're writing a story, how do you employ symbolism in your stories?
Oh boy.
Yeah. Is it something? Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's a good question. Boy. I mean, it's interesting. I personally am a believer in the creative process being as expressive as possible, as expressive as you can make it, and as personal as you can make it. And like symbolism as a tool, I think in my opinion, writing should be organic or as organic as possible if you can muster it. Like if you if you can find some thread that makes it innately you, whatever the heck you're writing. It doesn't even matter what it is. I'll give you an example and a story of from James Cameron's masterclass because he's just the best, and he's such a good teacher. His masterclass is the best one in my opinion by a lot. He talks about aliens, and there's a scene in Aliens where Ripley is carrying this child, through this space station, this abandoned space station, this ruined space station from all these aliens, and she's fleeing the aliens who are trying to kill her, and she steps into a room, and you hear this weird sound effect from her footsteps. She looks around, and she's just surrounded by alien eggs, just everywhere. Like it's like, oh god, so she's like dead. But then she hears something, and she's like frozen because she knows if she makes the wrong step, the eggs are going to open, and she's going to get eggs injected into her tummy, right? So but then she turns around when she hears something, and she does it really slowly, and she sees that there's something laying the eggs, and it's this weird thing, and it sounds disgusting, and like an egg gets kind of revealed, and then you look up, and there's this like tube thing, and then it turns into this like bulbous hide thing, and then it goes to these like spider legs, and then it goes into this like giant head structure. Then you see the mouth of the alien queen, and she's like, oh, got it, so I'm really dead, like right. So we're super duper dead, but she's calculating, she's trying to figure out what she's going to do here, right? And she winds up making a bargain with the queen to both say, because she's going to fry all the eggs, and the queen doesn't want all her eggs fried because she cares about her children, and she doesn't want her child to die, so they kind of make a bargain. And then she winds up escaping and then fries all the eggs anyways because screw aliens, right? They're bad.
Right.
Which is anyways, it's a funny thing. So James Cameron talks about where that came from, and he talks about he had a dream, and most James Cameron's dreams may as well just. I don't think anybody has higher quality dreams than that guy. I mean it because like almost everything that he makes comes from a dream. Avatar came from a dream. Terminator came from a dream. This scene came from a dream. And the dream was this. He was a kid, and he had the dream, I believe, when he was a kid. I don't know for sure, but it was a nightmare. The nightmare was he's running, he's playing hide and seek or running or something like that. I can't remember. And he goes into a closet. But when he closes the door, there's this weird sound, and he looks around, and he realizes that he's actually in a giant hornet's nest.
Oh, wow.
Just hornets everywhere, and he just freezes. And he says that the dream was so scary because if he made the wrong move, he's going to die because the hornets are going to kill him because they're dangerous, right? And he goes, you know what? It was funny. When I was creating the script and writing the script and creating the scene, my nucleus, my guiding light was trying to encapsulate this feeling I had from this nightmare and put it into this movie, inject that truth that I knew from that experience. And you look at the movie and you go, oh yeah, 100%, you absolutely nailed it, right? So, and it's funny because that, going back to Pasquini's class, it's like, you would never know that, but if you said that and you were right, you'd be true. But the cool thing is like, it's not exactly like pure symbolism, but at the same time, he took alien eggs and found a way to connect it to something absolutely true to him to communicate the terror of that sensation, and he absolutely succeeded. I don't think he's lying, right? But that's just kind of example of like organically finding something and then linking it symbolically in many ways. Like there's tremendous overlap. But okay, when I have symbolism in my own movie, I have an example of failure from Heritage, which you might remember. So symbolism. I mean, this isn't as much symbolism as much. No, it is. It is as much as it. But one of the plans was for it to not be as symbolic and just be like literal.
Right.
Like, you don't have to interpret anything.
Yeah.
Right? We wound up with something symbolic, but what we should have had was something way better, which would be less symbolic and more just like absolutely practical. Okay, so just so everybody knows here, Nathan and I made a movie. It's called Heritage. It's about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and it's about a Israeli Defense Force trooper and a Palestinian freedom fighter who get into a fight to the death in Gaza, and they knock over an explosive, which takes them both into the afterlife. And then they have to spend basically eternity in together in isolation, kind of at the hands of this God who you're trying to figure out what his deal is, right? And what his plan is for these two people, right? Life's eternal enemies now stuck together in the afterlife forever.
Right.
And it turned out pretty well. It's probably my most successful movie commercially, if you want to call it that way, so far. Made about 50 movies since, but that one was a big deal. And Nathan and I connected the most on that one.
Yeah.
So so they're stuck in the afterlife, right? And they're the way we created an afterlife was an infinite hallway. It was two walls that stretched on to infinity, and these two men were stuck between those walls, and they couldn't escape each other. They couldn't kill each other. And so their only options was to basically ignore each other or talk to each other. And if you can't kill each other and they're and you hate each other, you're not going to talk, so you just ignore each other. And the idea is they ignore each other for a long time.
Right.
Before they have to talk. They have to. That's the idea. But the thing that's keeping them trapped is walls. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if the audience here knows about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but walls are a theme. They're everything.
Yeah.
Right? So the Jews are separated from the Temple Mount by the Wailing Wall. That's the closest they get to the Temple Mount. And so that's where they go to pray to feel that connection with their ancestors and with God, right? But the Palestinians are separated from each other and from their own livelihoods, from Bethlehem, from Jerusalem, by the walls that the Israelis built. Right?
Yeah.
So walls are like it's symbolic, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they're trapped by walls.
And
Instead
dividing
it's
us,
funny because the walls that are supposed to separate them are actually in this world the thing that forced them together.
Right.
So there's some symbolism. And if you said, what's the symbolism? It's like I think you'd be a pretty safe bet to say that was the idea there. In fact, you wouldn't even know how true that is because of what we wanted to do.
Right.
Do you remember what we wanted to do?
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell it?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
So we wanted to make this. It went through multiple iterations. One of them was we wanted it to be this mosque/Jewish temple thing, which we didn't have the money for, and the guy who was going to make it said he could make it for a certain amount, but then he couldn't, kind of. And then, so we couldn't do this incredible. We had this 3D model for this structure. It was going to be flipping amazing, and it was going to look great. But the worst part of the movie, actually, is the fact that we're just stuck in this stagnant white walls with sand. Like, that's all there is.
Right, yeah.
Right? It's like, and it looks horrible. It's so ugly. And we spend 2/3 of the movie here, and people lose interest, and they rightfully should. It looks awful. But it was. So, anyways, we were gonna do this incredible thing that would have fixed how awful it looks. That's one thing. But then we were like, okay, cool. So we can't do that. What do we have instead? So somebody's like, ooh, what if we made it like the Prince of Egypt, right? What if we made it like Slot Canyon when Moses goes and talks to the burning bush? And I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. It's like God's creation, right? They're stuck in the walls of the cavern of God's creation. It's like, oh, that's so cool. That we couldn't do that because that was way too difficult, and we didn't actually know how to do that. And
a lot of budget constraints on this.
A few.
Yeah.
So then we had a third idea, which was interesting. The third idea was I thought I had like the most genius idea I'll ever have in my whole life, right? Which is hopefully not true, but it was a pretty good idea. Which I was like, oh my God. So we have to just have two straight walls, right? And one of them, I was like, there's two walls. The walls that the Israelis are building that separate that separate Palestinians from Jerusalem and from each other, right? And then you have the Wailing Wall. Let's make one wall the Wailing Wall, infinite, and let's make the other one the Israeli wall, infinite. It's like they're literally trapped by the actual walls that they both built. And we can actually do it. But then we couldn't do that either. And so we wound up with symbolism, even though I just wanted to put the literal thing there. It's like you don't have to interpret anything. And I'm a firm believer that clarity is a tool that especially students and beginning filmmakers are too shy about.
Yeah, I think we tend to think that, oh, well, if you understand it too easily, then it's not art.
Yeah,
or it's
that's
not,
dumb.
like, yeah.
I am such an adamant believer that that's horse manure. It's a lie. I think that the reason we do that as creators, especially when we start out, is because we go, I'm an auteur, I'm an original creator.
Nobody's in a story like this before. No one.
No, exactly. You know what? It's like, so all the other people did it this way. It's like, I'm not going to do it that way.
Yeah.
I'm so smart. Yeah. And really all they're doing is making a boring movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there is a weird dynamic, I think, between, like you were saying, the auteur directors, or what we call like art house films, or rather than versus like popcorn films or like big budget blockbusters. And I think oftentimes, in my opinion, I think blockbusters kind of are underrated by like critics and
totally.
filmmakers.
Yeah.
But they can still be fantastic films.
Yeah.
But just because it makes a lot of money, does that mean it's not art anymore? It's an interesting topic there.
It's interesting. Like, I was really thrilled when Parasite won. But it's interesting. Like, I didn't see Parasite as a art house film. I mean, I'm not sure if people do. Because I was like, this is just ridiculously entertaining. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
and then, like, we're talking about symbolism. It's like, I wouldn't even call it symbolism because it's closer to the the wall thing that I was talking about. It's like, it's absolutely class warfare. Clear cut.
Yeah.
Right, which makes me think it's also not our house, because our house tends to be more about like, well, what do you think? It's like Parasite's like, here's what I think.
Right. Well, but even in the name, like Parasite, it's like, who's the parasite?
Totally. Oh,
like,
great question. I didn't even think about that.
In the story? Like, is the family members who are coming kind of encroaching on the rich family, are they the parasites?
Wow.
Are the rich people the parasites
because
they're
both the parasites?
I think they're both the parasites.
But it's singular though. It's not plural. Dear.
All right.
Which one is it? Oh gosh, he's making us choose. I think I know what his answer is.
Yeah, I think so too.
Personally.
Yeah.
Which I think there's an extraordinarily good argument for, and I think the movie exemplifies that in so many ways. You know what I mean?
I also like the film though too, because it also doesn't point fingers just at one person. So it's not just pointing fingers at the wealthy and saying like they're saying
totally.
You can see that there's problems. Like, people have problems no matter what social or economic class system you're in.
Yeah.
Which I think the film actually does a really good job of kind of showcasing that.
I agree. I just think it's beautiful. I think it walks the line so well, because it doesn't. I mean, it's interesting. It's possible it has an agenda. Sure. I mean, people will tell you it does. I don't think so, though. I would defend it from this idea that it's trying to shove something down your throat or make you think a certain way. In my opinion, all it's doing is sharing a very authentic feeling perspective. Like, I didn't hate anybody in it. Not really. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel anybody was actually villainized. I felt like it was very truthful, and that's a very difficult thing to do. That's the reason I liked it so much, personally.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, I think films so often. Sorry, I just thought of Don't Look Up, for example. I love Don't Look Up, for example, and it does what I'm about to say you shouldn't do. The reason I like it is it's so unapologetically doing what it's doing. I don't care. Like if for example, what I dislike are movies or shows that go like, I'm giving you the whole picture, but they're clearly just wildly biased and have no understanding of the two sides or whatever, right? And that's fine. There's a place for that. That's why I like Don't Look Up. It's like, we're not empathizing about anything really here. I mean, if anything, they empathize with the billionaire guy, which I thought was interesting, because he wasn't necessarily a villain. He was detrimental to the world.
For anyone who hasn't seen it, you want to do like a little quick summary? Yeah,
sure. Don't Look Up is the story of 2020 America. That's my opinion. No, Don't Look Up is a story about how there's an asteroid that's going to come destroy Earth, and the world does a very bad job coping, and they politicize the meteor to the point where they actually start to believe that if they treat the meteor with the right amount of Well, if they start to get this idea that if they harvest the meteor and let it get like dangerously close to Earth, that they could actually become like super rich by it.
Right.
And then when they risk that, they basically throw away an opportunity to destroy it and save themselves. And then for this chance to become like super rich, basically. And then they fail to
stop it.
They fail to stop it, and everybody dies.
Right. Yeah.
Which is great. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, like the hubris of man.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's Icarus. You know, it's a wonderful classic tale. But they do it in a way of just villainizing as pretty much. There's symbolism's another thing to bring up here. There's virtually, I don't even think you can call it symbolism. It's
pretty blatant. Yeah,
it's pretty blatant. Yeah, you know exactly what's going on, which is another reason I like it. I mean, we keep talking about that sort of thing. But I thought that worked because they don't have to hide anything. The people who think they're hiding it and then fail, in my opinion, that's bad filmmaking. That's bad storytelling. It's bad screenwriting. It's bad thinking, right? It's like if you want to tell a point, unless you're going to just be blatantly one-sided, which is fair. Go for it. I'm all about that.
Yeah. But I think people do respect more when you give credence to both sides, because on every situation, there's not like one side's completely wrong and the other side's completely right. Usually there's like a gray area and there's a middle ground. And I think the stories that kind of show a little bit of both sides where I think we're more accepting of seeing the other side when it's shown in a more truthful light.
I completely agree. I mean, it's the objective. It's the hardest path to walk ever. But I think that's the reason why people love Game of Thrones, right? I think, or loved it until the Fire Nation
we don't talk about the last season.
Yeah. We don't talk about Bruno. I mean, the last season, exactly. Oh my gosh, that would be a funny thing if somebody did that. You know, we don't talk about season 8. Yeah, I mean, it's the objective. But you know, the thing is I think the majority of the population are coming to the same general realization, which is like, oh, everything's gray, everything's not black and white. What?
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think we seek that refuge, and I think stories are doing that. Like Arcane, for example.
Oh,
like,
dude,
was that good
amazing.
Or what?
Amazing. It's one of my favorite.
I can't believe how good it is.
I know. Mind-blowingly good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's crazy because that one has, in my opinion, fairly clear-cut good and evil, and yet they go above and beyond to make it not feel that way.
Yeah.
And to make you empathize with the bad guys.
Right.
And like that's great. That's a wonderful thing. I think it's definitely our aspiration as storytellers because we want to encapsulate truth and reflect that back to society, right? But the only way we're able to do that is by understanding things well, which is why I think when movies or stories or books or whatever fail to understand things accurately, they're not very good.
Right.
Because it's a missed opportunity. There's a metric of success, which is like, how well are you proving you understand the subject matter here?
Right.
Right.
And then I think understanding people.
Totally.
Because like it's people that are really what makes the story. It's like how people interact with and with each other and how we interact with the world. And seeing stories that will capture moments.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like a reflection verse. I was like, oh, yes, because that resonates. When it's truthful, it resonates.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. And it's like, yes, even if I couldn't articulate it before,
Totally.
but like I see that picture and it's like, oh, yes, that makes sense.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And it's the hardest thing to do. But the thing is you can
do it, though.
You can measure it though.
Right,
That's what's
right.
cool is like, you know, we talk about what's good or what's not good. It's like, well, there are some measures here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, and one of them is like, does this ring true to you? It's like, well, I'll tell you what, when you ring true to more people, right? So we're going back to the popular thing for a second. When you ring true to more people, you're doing something right. Oh my gosh, this brings up something funny I want to talk about. So I'm not sure if you know about Twilight. Have you watched all the Twilight movies or read the books?
I have seen them all, yeah.
Do you know the story of how it came to be?
Wasn't it based off of it was a short story, right?
Kind of.
Yeah, like
kind of.
Some like fan fiction.
Not quite.
No,
not quite.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the writer's name. We need Jamie from.
Oh yeah.
No, so I forget
Stephanie Myers.
Stephanie Myers?
Maybe.
Hang on, I want to get this right because I want to talk.
Stephanie Meyer.
Stephanie Meyer.
Okay.
Oh, we were close. Look at us. We got there, all three of us. 1, 2, 3. So she had a sexy dream. She had a sexy dream, and she goes, "I had this dream." And you know, going back to freaking James Cameron, you know, these people. There's some people who have dreams. There's this woman, a stay-at-home mom, Mormon woman, I believe in Utah, right? And she has a sexy dream. And it's a pretty compelling one at that because it turned into billions of dollars. Billions.
No,
She's
crazy.
a billionaire.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Almost positive. Anyways, so she has this dream and it's super evocative. It's like, you know, she's like in high school and there's this vampire and the vampire like really is into her because he wants to eat her but he can't because she's like, you know, all this blah blah blah, and she goes like, oh, it's just so visceral, it was so epic, and she goes like, I gotta communicate this. So she writes down, you could call it a short story, I don't forget exactly the way she described it, but she started writing out this fantasy thing, it's a little
Pretty
bit
erotic.
a little bit. I don't think it got super that way because the fun of it was the tension.
Right.
It wasn't it like what she captured, and I'll get into this in a second, is the lack of release. Right? I'm pretty sure that's the appeal. Is it's like it's all the buildup. She found this tension, and the tension is so much fun, especially for I think one predominant gender in the world, which explains the predominant audience, right? It's like, I love the buildup. And like that is what Twilight is it's books of buildup to a freaking kiss. Yeah. What? That's ridiculous. But she did it so well. She encapsulated this feeling. She took like a repressed sexuality from her Mormon upbringing and found a nugget of it that actually made things really awesome and extra special, and she made something like a kiss that much more powerful to everybody, and everybody reads that and go like, yeah, and they just need it. They need it so bad that they gave her billions of dollars because she had a dream that just kind of got the idea. Yeah. What? Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. Why did I start talking about this? Why did I start talking about this?
I don't know.
Wait, what were we talking about?
I think
before?
we were talking about like stories that are compelling and reaching people.
Oh, the truth. No, we're talking about the truth, right? She took the truth of craving something and not letting yourself quite have it, but wanting it so bad, but then the rules are kind of in your way, and like she took that turmoil, put it in a narrative, and the whole world said, I need this. I've needed this so bad. Like that's what artists do. Right. We get to choose what truth, or we not choose. I guess we're more like picked. Like we're picked by certain types of truth, right? Yeah. And then like we have to communicate that, especially the good ones. And when we do it so flipping well, whoa.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's almost like we shine a light on the truth.
Yeah.
So it's like the truth is out there.
Yeah, we
and
make
like
it
our job as artists.
understandable.
Yeah, exactly. Make it understandable.
Yeah,
I like that.
because we have a hard time processing it. I mean, I think one of my favorite examples I think of is like Gautier. You know Gautier, the musical artist?
Well, I don't think so.
You know the song I'm going to talk about. It was Someone That I Used to Know.
Oh, yes. Okay,
right?
yeah,
I mean, like,
yeah.
so it's so funny. Yeah. This band, nobody knew who they were, right? Not really.
No.
And then he comes out with this music video and this song. It's like Somebody That I Used to Know. It's like, and it's just so interesting. It's so one note. It's like, hey, I used to know you, now I don't. And that's kind of sad. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a sad thing. And the whole world was like, yeah, exactly. It is sad. It's super sad. And then like everybody just reveled in this moment because he took a real emotion and returned it to us and communicated it back and made it make sense. And our synapses go like, oh, yeah, you get me. Yeah. Because we're so desperate for somebody to understand what we're feeling. And art has the ability to do that. It's just so cool. Yeah. Yeah. So...
That's some good stuff, man.
Yeah, I liked it. I'm
cool.
a talker. You might have noticed.
I think it's also cool because it's almost like artists kind of have a responsibility as well to show the truth.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
It is our. I completely agree. I love that you put it that way. I think that's such a good way of putting it. It's like, yes, it is our responsibility, and we're either doing a good job of it or not. And it doesn't have to be anything. I mean, like we said, it's like,
it could be something simple. Yeah.
Most
of the time it is.
Almost better if it's simple. I think we often, as writers or creators or whatever, get caught up in this arrogance, and I certainly fall victim to this. I mean, look at me. I was 20 years old, and I was like, I'm gonna make a movie about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. It's like, maybe chill out, right? I mean, but the interesting thing is, I think we did create a good story that I think reflects in many ways. The whole story, spoiler alert, is about how these two people who kill each other, this Palestinian and Israeli, hate each other's guts, and they hate the entity that the other inhabits. They hate the Israelis, therefore I hate you, and you represent the Palestinians, therefore I hate you, and they murder each other on that premise. And then, but the twist is that when they were children, they saved each other from bullies, and they were really close friends for just a nugget of time. And when they realize that, then God takes them away, is the idea. And like, there's truth in that, which was good. So I mean, it was extremely arrogant of me to try to tackle the subject of the matter. At the same time, we did manage to find a little nugget of truth in the story, but the story came first, and then the Palestinian and Israeli packaging we were just trying to find a good story. It didn't have to be about anything,
Right.
right? I mean, at one point it was going to be about
it could be about a black guy and a white guy.
Sure,
it could
exactly.
be,
it could be 1,000 different things, right? But we were just hunting for a good story. We wound up on the story. And I remember actually with Austin Rogers, who I'm going to credit. Hi, Austin. You helped write this movie. I got in trouble for accidentally forgetting his name in the credits. It was an accident, I swear, Heather. Forgive me.
I remember that.
that was lame. That was too bad. Anyways, Austin Rogers and I met up, and we were like, we're going to tell a story, and it's going to be good. And I told him I had an idea for what if the Palestinians really got stuck in the afterlife. And I don't remember exactly who thought of the nugget. It's like, what if they were friends at the end? I think it was me. It's possible I'm wrong. I would bet that it was me though, because I have. Anyways, doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure that I thought of that idea, and then I went, oh, perfect. And then we decided to go with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict idea because we had like 4 other ideas.
Right.
We weren't sitting here going like, what's the most ridiculous thing we could pretend we know everything about? It was not that way.
No.
But the thing is like we have that temptation, and we need to. I think as writers, we need to really, especially beginning ones, we need to fight this idea that it has to be so big or grand or impressive or whatever. Because like I just said, billions of dollars, just like a really intense sexual fantasy.
Yeah.
Right? It's like billions. It's like, ooh, I thought I was stuck in a closet with a bunch of wasps. Is like, oh, aliens. Right? It's like, it's so much about, in my opinion, finding that thing that you just really understand. It doesn't matter what the heck it is. It's something that happens to us, and finding a way to make that really translate. It's like, oh, remember that girl that I used to know?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Right? It's like,
because we all have that girl.
Yeah, somebody. Somebody. It's like, and then the whole world goes like, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of it. And yes, I do think it's our responsibility, but we have to mine our own experiences.
Yeah.
Right? And the more experiences we have, the better.
Yeah, I think that's really good too. Actually, like when I think with USC, that was one thing, like because you went to USC, and I know they tend to not. They like when the graduate students that they don't want people who studied film generally. From what I heard.
Oh, that's a fun thing to talk about. Yeah. Oh, okay. So USC does some funny things.
Okay.
That I really respect, actually, in a huge way. I at first it puzzled me, but I then realized it's their genius. USC brings in people from programs that you wouldn't expect. For example, they don't typically bring in seasoned filmmakers. They bring in a handful of people who've been making movies for a while, and they're usually pretty impressive because you need them in a film program. But they seem to have a philosophy of actually avoiding filmmakers to a large degree. I mean, ignoring filmmakers isn't necessarily the right word. Instead, I would say this: they mine society they mine their applicants for people with unique experiences and backgrounds. Like they'll bring in doctors, or they'll bring in military veterans, or they'll bring in dance emphases, like dancers, or football players. Literally, I mean, one of my classmates was the Raiders wide receiver. I'm seriously like, and he did like 4 different teams, but the Raiders is where he had this longest take. It's like because they have unique perspectives, and if they have some storytelling written talent, they typically judge you on your writing talent above everything else. Even though you're going into the production program, they give you a platform and a group of people to create stuff together, right? And like one of my most successful friends. Her name's Irva. I'm not sure if she'd call me a friend. I think she's great. Her name's Irva. She's got this incredible film on HBO Max. She was a linguistics studies doctorate candidate or something. Like 22 years old, and she's like, she has like one of the most advanced degrees in studying languages.
Wow.
Right? And it's like, you think that's gonna be really neat. And like, you think she's going to tell different types of stories that are fun that we haven't seen before? It's like, you're damn right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's cool. You know, that's really neat. That's a good way of doing it. You're going to create the next generation of filmmakers that way. No question. Let me give you the ultimate example. One of the ultimate examples. There's tons. But George Lucas was, he didn't know what the heck he was going to do. He wasn't that interested in anything. He liked cars and driving, and he studied archaeology and anthropology.
Right.
That was George Lucas before he went to USC. But they brought him in because they thought, I don't know, something's neat here, right? He's a little different,
Yeah.
right? He comes in and he instantaneously starts making some of the most successful like short films of his time period, like instantaneously, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't know what the heck he's doing. He figured it out pretty quick,
Right.
which is good.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, like, but if you were thinking, oh, we want people who know cameras, it's like, no. It's like USC does a very good job of prioritizing the right thing. And it's funny because, you know, people see me as a pretty capable production person, which I think I am, but that stuff is just not that important. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre, like making things look pretty. I mean, it's so funny. Students, young people, beginning filmmakers, the first thing they do is they make something and they go, well, that looked like garbage.
Yeah.
Right? But what's so interesting is they didn't usually spend years, up to like 10 years, going like, I'm going to make something look real, like a real thing. Right? Instead of just focusing on telling a good story. Because the thing is they think that their thing that they made isn't entertaining because it doesn't look good. You know why? Because everybody tells them, well, it doesn't look professional.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is, it doesn't matter if it looks professional. It doesn't. It really doesn't. Good stuff will be conveyed. People will interact with your story no matter how bad it looks. Almost no matter how bad it looks.
Yeah.
If there's compelling characters, if there's something interesting you're doing with the camera,
Right.
or if it makes sense, or if it's actually communicating something honest, like we were talking about,
Yeah.
if it's achieving those goals, it can achieve that no matter what your ISO is at. Right? Don't get me started on ISO stuff because it drives me crazy. People feel like it's like ISO is like the greatest sin. You know, it's like, oh, there's grain. There's everybody. We failed.
There was a time when stuff was shot on film, and everything was grainy.
Yeah.
You know?
No, exactly. You know, it's like, oh, Super 8.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I understand we don't want grain.
For
It's
sure, yeah,
not
yeah.
good. It's not good. But whatever. Like, the thing is, USC puts the priority on the right things, which is like, it's what's on the page. It's so interesting. I was just looking up, not lectures, interviews with filmmakers, because that's what I do these days. I realized that you don't need to read books about filmmaking anymore. Not really. Because my personal philosophy, which I need to commit myself to actually doing what the heck they're telling me to do. But the thing is like we're at a time now with YouTube and the internet where we can access what the actual filmmakers are saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of it.
Right.
Almost every interview the big shots are doing is recorded. And it's on YouTube. Almost all of it.
Yeah.
It's like there's no barrier. We used to have to read books written by people who didn't make movies interpreting what the real filmmakers
Right.
were doing, but they didn't have access to them either. So there's a bunch of lies, a bunch of antiquated ideas about how to do things, how
Right.
to write, how to blah, blah, blah.
So let's talk maybe a little bit about like your personal process of writing. So like when you're writing a script, like what's your process kind of look like? Like does the idea come first and then you start writing
boy.
a story? And like do you write characters first? Are you more like a plot heavy sort of guy?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
No, that's a good question. Okay, well, there's a few things. One of them is that I have this notepad. And I haven't added this thing in a while. It's a good thing I did it when I did, though. Story ideas. So here we go. Here's my story ideas.
There you go.
You just go down. I have a number of
That's awesome.
I have a few. So basically I'll be going around doing everyday whatever, and my brain will just be doing whatever. And then occasionally I'll see something and I'll go, huh. It'd be funny if there was a movie about like that.
Yeah.
Right? And then if it seems like there's a nugget there, I'll write it in my note and then I address it. That's actually how Heritage came out. I literally wrote, oh, what if a Palestinian and Israeli got like stuck in a room together? That'd be weird. Well, I mean, what would happen? And then it wound up becoming a movie, right? So I usually write down interesting premises, interesting ideas, and then when I feel like I need to actually write something, I'll usually consult the list. I'll tell you one of the weirdest examples
Okay.
for a movie I haven't made yet that I might make soon because I really should. I was at Disneyland, and I was riding the what's the coaster that does the big loop around Mickey's face? The Incredicoaster or something like that. And that's what it is now. Back then it was something else. Yeah. But and it was just so interesting. I was like, why do we go on roller coasters? Isn't that dumb? Like we want to go put ourselves in a seemingly life-defying, deadly situation. Right. We want to create this idea that we're gonna die in our own bodies, because our bodies, when we fall down, our whole bodies go like, "You're gonna die," and we go, "Ha ha ha!" It tickles. Right. It's fun. I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, why on earth?
I'm with you there. I hate roller coasters.
Oh, really? I love roller coasters. No, I absolutely love it. But what I realized is, like, we are in some ways we're kind of torturing ourselves because like we're hurting ourselves in some way. Like, all of our insides are sending signals to our whole body going, "You're gonna die," and then we go, "Oh, it tickles. I love it. Yay!" Or we go to horror movies, right? And I realized, like, why do we put ourselves in situations where things hurt? Or even emotionally, like we go to see a movie and we go, "Oh, it made me cry." It's like, "Oh, it hurt so good," right? It's like weird. We're all kind of masochistic, aren't we? A little bit. And then I was like, I wonder if in the future we're gonna make that more extreme for ourselves. It's like because tattoos hurt a lot more, and they hurt a lot afterward. But like we get addicted to it. Like there's an actual tattoo addiction. It's like, oh yeah. That's where most of my good ideas come from, I think. Yeah. It's just from...
Almost like real life and taking things to the extreme, or real life and seeing some connection between things, or seeing how observing.
Just observing and kind of absorbing things, and then trying to channel those into something. And then making little notes here and there. Yeah. Let's see. Well, okay, how about this one? My wife and I met on a cruise. Okay. On the dance floor on New Year's.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You guys got married really recently.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And our story's wild, just to give you kind of a span of the whole thing, right? We met on a cruise, then she came over here. We drove across all of California. I went over there. We did this whole trip across the UK, all the countries. And I went on the dog walks with her village, right? And then, things got more complicated. We had to figure out how we were going to do long distance, which was really hard. And then the pandemic hits right when we're planning to get married. And I have to get over there during this crazy pandemic, right? It's like it sounds like I'm talking about a rom-com, right? And I've been percolating this idea for a feature around it, right? But I was like, how do I package it? Like, how do I do that? And that's been in the back of my head, trying to figure that out when I'm doing my little drives to work and whatnot. And then I realized for Christmas in 2019, I wrote her 16 love letters. It's this package. And all of it is, I just freestyled it, right? And it was like, I told her to open these at different times. And I realized, oh, wow, that's a format. There's a story structure, right? It's, maybe not 16, maybe 5. Maybe 5 chapters, right? And or 3, or whatever. It could be 3 chapters. It could be however the heck you want to do it. The thing is, there's a true thing here, right? And they all harken back to different moments. You can have the current story, which could be during the pandemic, where we're struggling to get to be together, whether or not we're even going to get married, and we're, it's like it's struggling. And then, she pulls out this book, and we go to the flashbacks of the experiences, right? You actually have this innately packaged thing to get us through all the monotonous details and get to the heart of the story that's original. And all of it comes from just realizing the nuggets of cool truth that were there to begin with. I guess that's my process, is just trying to harvest whatever's there as often as I can. But here's another thing, though. Sorry, I totally cut you off because you were about to say something. The experiences are everything, and I think that's one thing that's lost on people who love movies is, I think a lot of people who love movies often get... It's so interesting. I have another story. The writer of the Film History Time, the first talkie movie, oh my gosh, the band singer, the
jazz singer,
thank you very much. So the jazz singer, the writer of it, taught at USC. Okay, and this was back in the 50s, and he hated all of the undergrad scripts, and it's this legendary conversation that's told through a lot of the writing staff. And he goes like, "You know what's wrong with all you idiots?" And they're like, "I don't know." He goes like, "You haven't done anything with your lives. Nothing. Like, that's the problem here. Like, your scripts suck because you suck. Like, you've clearly not lived at all." And that's a big problem because, and he goes like, I think it was literally just him getting it off his chest, because I think he was just really fed up with reading garbage over and over and over again of people trying to reach beyond what's true in many ways for them, and failing to inject anything true. They're trying to be like, write some. They're trying to repackage something they've seen 100 times.
Right.
It's like, I'm going to make the Star Wars thing, and it's, there's an empire in space, and it's killing the weaklings, and the peasants, and the peasants are mad about that, right? And it's like, but there's a princess. It's like, shut up. like I hate it. Stop. Yeah. Right. And that was his conclusion. And the interesting thing about that is that there's an absolute antidote, which is just to go have experiences. Right? It's just to go out and take crazy risks and do stuff that you wouldn't think.
Yeah.
Right? And like, your experiences will so quickly be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And then it can shape you also as a person.
Yeah.
It makes you dynamic, makes you interesting, and then you can tell an interesting story.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, 100%. It's just, I love that he did that. I love that he did that.
Yeah.
And it's just so true for young people. But the cool thing is that you can't do that forever though either. Like, that is such a uniquely ripe opportunity for young people.
Yeah, when you have the flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, like, no, you don't need a pension.
Yeah, you don't have as many responsibilities. As you just have to get. Yeah.
Totally, and it's funny because it's reflective. Look at Steven Spielberg's life. I mean, what's also really cool though about that is those life experiences will come very quickly just from trying to make movies. Like, you want to make something, like you want to make something grand or whatever. You're gonna wind up with some crazy experiences. I mean, probably the best example is when we were planning to make Heritage, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Israel, huh?
Right, yeah.
And I'm gonna go stick my head in the whole thing and risk my life. And everybody's like, yeah, that sounds great. And I did, and I almost died. And it's like, that was great. What's crazy about that? I tell people that story today, and people flip out. Like, they go like, holy smokes, you're the real deal. And I'm like, wow, that's what made me the real deal?
Yeah.
Being stupid, like being crazy.
But I think also being willing to experience, like we were saying. It's like you're willing, and then like willing to learn about something, willing to actually go in. I think and it makes it authentic, and it
Well, I'll tell you what it also does when I talk to people about, we're shooting a scene with guns in it, right? And the actor's sitting there going like, "Huh, how's this gun thing work?" Or it's like how am I supposed to feel? It's like we look each other in the eye, and if we both had any experience with guns being pointed at us,
right,
or being in an actually socially life-threatening situation, we know exactly what's going on between the two of us. I was in seriously life-threatening situations twice. One more than another, which is oddly not the time when they were pointing the guns. It was more social. It was like it was really dangerous. But like, we know we hardly even have to talk about it. You can see it in each other's eyes. Like, this is what's going on. It's like, oh, I know just from the words you chose as the director in this context that you're actually speaking from some degree. Like, for example, I don't need to hype anything up. Just want a gun at you, man. Like, you gotta freak out. It's like, that's not actually what happens. You chill out. Your killer instincts come in, and you get calculated. Your eyes open up. Like, in many ways, you relax. Or like, that's a real thing. You're sitting there like, I mean, unless you're somebody who just has no capacity for the stress of the situation, you just turn into a puddle, right? Which can work, by the way. That's a good way to get out of some situations. People go like, "Oh, this guy's literally harmless. He's a mess. There's no danger here." Right? Which is why children do that. When stress gets them, they just flop on the floor. It's like, oh, got it. You can get out of problems that way. But yeah, no, life experiences are just is the lifeblood, in my opinion, of writing and creating things. It gives you so much more to express. And I just think expression is the key to enjoying it too. It's like, if you think about writing as this like task, like a job, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah,
it's gonna be really hard.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get it to this like therapy, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like as soon as you get it, it's like I gotta get this out of my system, right? It's like suddenly the pages start flowing and the clock starts spinning, and you don't even realize what happened. You feel good afterward. Like that's nice. But it only works if you have the trauma, have the trauma you need to therapize. You know what I'm saying? Anyways. That's what I think. I have a lot of opinions, as you might have noticed, so I feel like I'm just going.
That's good, man. That's good. Well, awesome. I think we'll probably wrap this up.
Okay.
Did you
You haven't spoken enough.
I mean, you've spoken plenty for both of us.
But I want to hear your. I should have asked your opinion on things. Nathan.
Yes.
What Let me see. I need a good question. Hang on. Let me think for a second. Nathan Johnson. What does your writing process look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for me personally, like I usually find it's usually things that happen to me. So kind of similar to you, like experiences, but I also tend to be a little more plot driven. Yeah. So I work with my brother a lot on our writing projects, and he's also pretty plot heavy. Yeah. So we come up with like a concept usually first, and we start with the concept, an idea. And then we say, okay, what are the characters, like what's the emotional journey within this, high concept idea? Like sometimes like one of our stories, it's, they're stuck in a town that they can't get out of. And then every time they try to escape, they wake back up in their beds. Okay, so that's an interesting concept. They're in this like horror-esque town. And then we describe it. Okay, well, it's like, what is it like? It's kind of like Inception, but like if Stephen King wrote it. And it's like, okay, I get it. I get it. So things like that. So we start with that, and then we go, okay, what are the characters in this world? It's almost like you kind of like make a sandbox, and you're like, these are like the pieces, and you play them around, and then you kind of move them around and say, okay, well, this character influences this character. This arc, like there always needs to be like a beginning, middle, and end for your story, right? And the same thing, I think, with your characters as well. So they have like a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's kind of interplaying these characters and saying, okay, what directions can we push them? How can we make them learn from each other or grow towards each other or be pushed farther apart? Yeah. So for me, I think that's generally like my process and approach to storytelling.
I love that. Yeah. That makes total sense. And it's cool because there's a lot of similarities, but there's also differences between what we're both talking about. And like, I think it's so interesting when I look at the advice of all the big shots and whatnot, because like I said, I study them a lot. They never give super rigid advice of any kind. Yeah, there's really only one giant chunk of advice that they all seem to give, which is like just do it. However it works for you. Like if it works for you, do it. Yeah. But the important thing is that you don't stop doing it. Yeah, yeah. Which I think is a lot of people give up too soon with writing. And like people hit like writer's block or they whatever it is, like if you're actually really writing, like when I was like writing my novel, like I was like every day I was like, an hour a day. Like I would, even if I didn't write anything, I would sit at my computer and I looked at the page and I typed stuff. It sometimes didn't make any sense, but like I was like every day. So you have to find like some sort of system that you can do. And like you're saying, it just needs to be consistent. Like I think there's a lot of people that call themselves writers, but they're not actually writing things. You know what I mean? Like we all know those people. It's like, oh yeah, I thought about writing something, or I thought about this story, but like if you never actually do it, then it's just in your head. And if it's just in your head, nobody else is going to experience it. And we were talking earlier about just like telling truth. Like if you're not able, if you don't get it out of your head and onto a page or onto like it's not going to go anywhere. Yeah, I completely agree. It's funny. There's really only one rule, and the rule is about as broad as it could possibly be. Yeah, it's just keep going. That's it. Yeah. It's just so funny because you can tell when you listen to these guys, they want to say something more profound, sophisticated. They want to be like, no. You sit down and you start with the phrase, and there I was, right? It's like, and just always do that. And every day it'll come to you, and it's perfect. And it's just not that simple. At the same time, it is as simple as long as you're doing it right. Just doing it, yeah. It's like you just got to do it. It's like Nike, just do it. It is, just do it. Yeah, I actually have this video that maybe you could link or something. Yeah, I made a compilation of all the filmmakers saying that. because
That's good.
I've been to all the interviews in person, and I've seen them online, and I've seen them everywhere, and I was like, oh wow, they really are all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And it comes down to basically 5 words, and it has to do with filmmaking and screenwriting. It's the same exact principle, which is just go make movies, friends, iPhone. Those 5 things are said by every single one of them. And I was like, you know what? I should just make a supercut, and I did. And it works.
Yeah.
It's like. So whenever sometimes I'll talk to somebody if they want advice or whatever, I'll be like, "What if I told you they all said the same thing? Would you take their advice? Would you do that?"
You do it, yeah.
And they're like, "Well, yeah. I mean, they're all saying the same thing. You're lying." It's like, no, they like the same 5 words.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I was like, "You promise you're gonna take their advice?" And it's like, "You're not gonna like it. You're not gonna like it." It's
Yeah.
like, okay, here it is, and I show it to him. It's like, it's funny because like Martin Scorsese's getting all angry. He goes like, "What do you have in your pocket? You can make a movie on it. Go, get out of my face." Stop asking me this question. I hate you. He doesn't hate anybody except for Marvel movies. I'm kidding.
No, we won't go there.
Well, thanks so much for having me. This was
Absolutely,
a real pleasure,
man. Yeah, it's been a pleasure,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'll definitely have to have you on again sometime.
Oh, my pleasure. I'll have to think of new things to say. Oh, geez.
Pressure's on. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the About Story podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Check us out, and we will see you next time.